Sources said police are trying to establish whether Anne had died following an accidental fall or whether she was the victim of an attacker.
The call comes in at 11:40 in the morning, not to the police, to the ambulance service first, the way these things so often begin, with someone hoping it isn't what they fear it is, reaching for the number that might still mean survival, rather than the one that means something worse.
By the time officers from Devon and Cornwall police arrive at the property in Haytor Vale, on the eastern edge of Dartmoor National Park, the hope is already gone. Inside the house, a 1970s chalet bungalow sitting at the end of a quiet rural lane, a plaque at the driveway reading Widdecombe's Rest, a woman lies dead.
She is 78 years old. She has sustained serious injuries. She is alone. She was one of the most recognizable political figures in Britain. She had been on live television that same morning. She had been exchanging text messages less than 24 hours before. And now the road to her home is sealed. Forensic officers move through the rooms.
Devon and Cornwall police begin making calls, not to notify the public, not yet, but to understand what happened in the space of time between her last message and this moment. That window is less than 24 hours long. What filled it has not yet been answered. Dark Matters True Crime. This is the story of Ann Widdecombe, politician, broadcaster, public figure, and the victim at the center of an active murder investigation that, as of this filming, remains unsolved. If you're new here, subscribe and hit the bell. Every case we cover is fully verified. Sources, court records, official statements. Nothing speculated, nothing invented, only what is known. This is what is known. Anne Noreen Widdecombe was born on the 4th of October, 1947, in Bath, Somerset, the daughter of James Murray Widdecombe, a Ministry of Defence civil servant, and his wife Rita. She was, from the beginning, a woman who seemed to arrive in the world with a fully formed sense of what she believed and what she intended to do about it. Her education followed her father's naval postings. She attended the Royal Naval School in Singapore and La Sainte Union Convent School in Bath, the latter a Catholic institution, though Widdecombe herself was raised in a deeply evangelical Anglican household. That early tension between institutions, between what was and what she believed ought to be, would become the defining rhythm of her life. She read Latin at the University of Birmingham, then philosophy, politics and economics at Lady Margaret Hall, Oxford, where she served as secretary and then treasurer of the Oxford Union. She worked for Unilever from 1973 to 1975, then as a senior administrator at the University of London from 1975 until she entered Parliament in 1987. She had tried before. Failed bids in Burnley in 1979 and Plymouth Devonport in 1983 did not discourage her. In 1982 she was elected Conservative Member of Parliament for Maidstone in Kent, a seat she would hold, later as Maidstone and the Weald following boundary changes, for 23 consecutive years. Her rise through government was methodical and uncompromising. Under Prime Minister John Major, she served as Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State at the Department of Social Security from November 1990, moving to the Department of Employment in 1993, ascending to Minister of State for Employment in 1994, and reaching her most prominent government role in July 1995, Minister of State for Prisons at the Home Office, under Home Secretary Michael Howard. She held that post until the Conservatives lost power in May 1997. During those 2 years, she visited every prison in England and Wales, more than 130 facilities. It was an undertaking without precedent for a prisons minister, and it was entirely in keeping with a woman who had decided that if she was going to govern something, she was going to understand it firsthand. Her tenure was not without controversy. She defended on the floor of the House of Commons the government's policy of shackling pregnant prisoners during hospital visits, arguing that hospitals were not secure environments and that escape risk was real. The Labour opposition called it degrading. Widdecombe held her position without visible discomfort. She rarely found visible discomfort to be a useful response to criticism. In 1993, in the middle of her ministerial career, she left the Church of England. The Church of England's General Synod had voted in November 1992 to permit the ordination of women to the priesthood. For Widdecombe, whose theological convictions were as absolute as her political ones, this represented an irreconcilable breach. She was formally received into the Roman Catholic Church in 1993. Her brother Malcolm, an Anglican canon in Bristol, remained in the Church of England until his death in 2010. Her nephew Roger is a practicing Anglican priest. She crossed the boundary alone, on principle, without apology. After the Conservatives' 1995 defeat, she served in William Hague's shadow cabinet, first as Shadow Health Secretary, then Shadow Home Secretary, before announcing in 2007 that she would not stand at the next general election. She left Parliament in 2010, after 23 years. She was 62. She did not disappear. In 2010, she competed on Series 8 of the BBC's Strictly Come Dancing, partnered with professional dancer Anton Dubake. The judges were unkind. The British public was devoted. She survived to the quarterfinals on viewer votes alone. 9 weeks into a competition most observers had expected to end her humiliation by week 2. Anton Dubake, in his tribute following her death, described her as a real friend, fun, upbeat, positive. She had, as she tended to do, exceeded every expectation set for her by people who had underestimated the reserves of her. She never married. She frequently said so in public, and frequently explained why, that sex outside the lifelong commitment of marriage was morally unacceptable to her, that this was not a sacrifice but a conviction, and that she had no interest in apologizing for it. There had been one documented romance, with Oxford Union colleague Colin Maltby, which had not led to engagement and had not been consummated. She reportedly threatened legal action against journalists who characterized her otherwise. She was 78 years old and had spent her entire adult life in public life, and she was not ambiguous about a single belief she had ever held. In 2019, Brexit brought her back into elected politics. She joined Nigel Farage's Brexit party and stood for election to the European Parliament for South West England. She won. She assumed her MEP seat on the 2nd July 2019 and held it until 31st of January 2020, the date the United Kingdom formally withdrew from the European Union, at which point all British MEP seats were abolished. She had, in her 70s, won an election and served a term, and the term had ended not in defeat but in the completion of the project she had stood for. In 2023, she joined Reform UK, the Brexit Party's successor organisation, and was appointed the party's Immigration and Justice spokesperson. She was active in that role until the morning of 8 July 2026. Her management company Cloud9 described her publicly as someone who loved the cut and thrust of political debate, and who was still actively campaigning for Reform UK and offering forthright views on the hot topics of the day, 16 years after leaving Parliament. She lived alone in a 1970s chalet bungalow in Hayter Vale, Devon, on the eastern fringe of Dartmoor National Park. The property had no locked gates, no advanced perimeter security. Neighbours noted it was a rural home, open, accessible, sitting in one of the more trafficked hiking areas of the south of England. The plaque at the end of the driveway read Widdecombe's Rest. On the morning of 8 July 2026, she appeared on Talk TV, defending Nigel Farage's re-election strategy. It would be her last broadcast. The last 24 hours of Ann Widdecombe's life have been partially reconstructed from her digital communications, her confirmed media appearances, and the official police timeline. They are incomplete. The gaps are not cosmetic. They are the center of the investigation. Wednesday, 8th July 2026, 8 a.m., Widdecombe completes a live remote television interview on Talk TV. The subject, Nigel Farage's re-election campaign. She delivers her position, as she always delivered her positions, clearly, without notes, without equivocation. The interview ends. She remains at the property in Hayter Vale, where she has been conducting her media appearances remotely since leaving Westminster. Wednesday, 8th July 2026, 12:19 p.m. She exchanges text messages with a researcher for Channel 5's Matt Allwright show. These are the final verified communications from Ann Widdecombe that have been made public. She is, at this point, engaging with a work commitment, a scheduled appearance on Channel 5 later that afternoon. Wednesday, 8th July 2026, 12:48 p.m. She fails to log into a Zoom link for a 1 p.m. Channel 5 broadcast. Subsequent attempts to reach her go unanswered. No further contact is made. No one at Channel 5 can raise her. What happens between 12:48 p.m. on Wednesday and the arrival of emergency services the following morning is unknown. Thursday, 9th July 2026, approximately 11:40 a.m., Devon and Cornwall police are called to an address at Hayter Vale by the ambulance service. Officers arrive to find Ann Widdecombe deceased inside the property. She has, in the official language of Devon and Cornwall police, sustained serious injuries. The specifics of those injuries have not been confirmed by law enforcement. The post-mortem results have not been released publicly. The cause of death, as of this filming, has not been officially established. The gap at the center of this case, the approximately 23 hours between her last known contact and the arrival of emergency services, has not been closed. It is not known when exactly Ann Widdecombe died, how she came to sustain the injuries described in the official police statement, or who, if anyone, was present at the property during that window. The identity of the person who found her has not been officially confirmed. Devon and Cornwall police have said only that officers attended the address after being called by the ambulance service. Media reporting on who discovered her body is divided, some outlets naming a carer who worked for her, others naming a gardener. Police have not confirmed either account. The details surrounding those final hours remained under wraps in the immediate aftermath, withheld by police over concerns about the integrity of what would become a murder investigation. The family was informed. The party was informed. The public was not yet. But the questions were already being asked inside the investigation before they reached the press. Before we go further, if you're finding this case as extraordinary as it is, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. We cover cases like this one in full, verified, sourced, and produced to the highest standard we can bring to them. It costs you nothing, and it helps us keep doing this. Back to Dartmoor. By the time the details of Widdecombe's death began reaching the press on Friday, 10th of July 2026, Devon and Cornwall police had already been working the scene for more than 24 hours. The road to the property had been sealed. Forensic officers were conducting an extensive examination of the chalet bungalow and the surrounding land. The initial framing from police was cautious. A suspicious death under investigation. Officers had spoken to at least one individual at or connected to the property. Details were being withheld. The language was deliberate. Then, on the afternoon of Friday, the 10th July, the investigation changed register. Devon and Cornwall police formally escalated the case from a suspicious death to an active murder investigation. The Force Major Crime Investigation Team took operational control. The case was assigned a code name, Operation Hunlen. Detective Chief Inspector Ilona Rosen and Assistant Chief Constable Matt Longman became the public faces of the investigation. At a press conference in Exeter that Friday afternoon, ACC Longman addressed the question that had already begun circulating through media and political commentary, whether this death was in any way connected to Widdecombe's politics. His answer was direct. While we worked closely with our partners and consulted counter-terrorism policing as part of our initial inquiries, the incident is not being treated as terrorism. At this time, again, it's early stages of the investigation, so we remain open-minded at this time. I've got no information to believe that that is a politically motivated crime, end quote. The context for that statement matters. In the previous decade, 2 British MPs had been murdered in politically charged circumstances, Joe Cox in 2016 and David Ames in 2021. The killing of a prominent political figure on her own property was not, in 2026, an event that could be assessed without that history. Devon and Cornwall police were assessing it anyway, carefully, with counter-terrorism colleagues consulted from the start. And they were saying, publicly and on the record, this is not terrorism, this is not political. The motive, if it has been established at all, has not been made public. Also on Friday, 10 July, police announced they were seeking a white male suspect. This is the moment the investigation pivots. Stay with us. What happens next is where Operation Hunlen gets complicated. A 26-year-old white British male was arrested on the afternoon of Friday, 10 July 2026. He was taken into custody at an address in Newton Abbot, Devon, approximately 10 miles from Haytor Vale. He was arrested on suspicion of murder. He was held. By Saturday, 11 July 2026, he had been released without charge. Devon and Cornwall police stated explicitly that he was no longer part of the investigation. Operation Hunlen was back to the beginning. No suspect is currently in custody. No charges have been filed. Local reporting has introduced one additional piece of information that has neither been confirmed nor denied by police. The claim, attributed to unnamed local witnesses, of a man in hiking clothing who allegedly arrived at the property in a van during the night before the body was discovered. Dartmoor is a heavily trafficked hiking area. The property had no locked gates. Whether this reported figure is relevant to the investigation, police have not said. The investigation, as of this filming, remains active and open. As of the date of this production, there is no confirmed suspect in the murder of Ann Widdecombe. The 26-year-old white British man arrested in Newton Abbot on Friday 10 July 2026 was released without charge within 24 hours and eliminated from the investigation. He is not a suspect. He has not been named publicly. What Devon and Cornwall police have publicly established is a profile of the circumstances, not of a perpetrator. The property in Heighter Vale was remote, rural, and unsecured. Widdecombe lived alone. The area surrounding the home is heavily frequented by walkers and hikers, particularly in the summer months. The absence of locked gates or perimeter fencing meant the property was accessible to anyone who chose to approach it. Operation Hunlen continues. The investigators have not disclosed what lines of inquiry they are pursuing, what forensic evidence has been recovered from the property and the surrounding land, or whether they have identified any persons of interest following the elimination of the initial arrested man. What they have said publicly amounts to this: the death is a murder. The investigation is active. There is no current suspect in custody. The motive is unknown. The full circumstances of how Ann Widdecombe came to be found dead in her home on the morning of 9 July 2026 are unknown. These are not editorial omissions. They are the current state of the public record, accurately reported. We're going to take a moment. If this case matters to you, leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from, or tell us what you think investigators need to do next. Your engagement helps the algorithm push this content to people who care about cases like this one. We appreciate every single one of you. The news of Widdecombe's death, and then the news of the murder investigation, moved through British public life in a way that reflected how large a figure she had been, and how polarizing. Prime Minister Keir Starmer, in a statement that bridged party lines, called her a distinguished politician over many, many years, with many achievements, and described her death as a huge, huge loss. He was careful not to speculate on motive, and stated that the security of public figures was of the utmost importance. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch described Widdecombe as a formidable politician who was never afraid to speak her mind and fought hard for what she believed. Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, described her as a force of nature and an incredibly loyal ally. In his primary public statement, he said, "When Ann Widdecombe decided to stand for the Brexit Party in the snap 2019 European elections, it was a big moment and huge boost. The voters loved her. She played a decisive role in getting Brexit over the line and will be missed by us all." In a subsequent Talk TV appearance, he warned that things have become even more dangerous for people in public life. Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson called her a heroic Brexiteer and a great speaker who could move Tory audiences to such ecstasy that she was a very hard act to follow. Anton de Baker, her Strictly Come Dancing partner, called the news the saddest of news and said he was devastated. Health Secretary James Murray said, "I can't say I always agreed with her views, but she was such a part of our politics. Everyone can recognize the contribution that she made." Cloud9 Management, her agents, released a statement through the grief. Her life and career were driven by her strong Christian values and commitment to public service. She loved the cut and thrust of political debate and, 16 years after leaving Parliament, was still actively campaigning for Reform UK and offering forthright views on the hot topics of the day. As Ann once said, "We get one go this side of eternity. One go." Her nephew Roger Widdecombe, speaking from his home in Cheltenham, said, "My thanks go to everybody who has sent messages of condolences, but we are not going to say anything further at this stage." The family statement was brief. The silence behind it was not. Before we close, subscribe if you haven't, bell notification on. This case is going to develop. When it does, we'll be back with a full update, fully verified, the same way we've built everything you've watched today. Ann Widdecombe is buried. The investigation into her murder is not. Operation Hunlen remains active under Devon and Cornwall Police's Force Major Crime Investigation Team. No suspect is in custody. No charges have been filed. The post-mortem results have not been made public. The cause of death has not been officially confirmed, beyond the characterization of serious injuries. The questions that cannot yet be answered are not peripheral. They are the case. Who was at Heighter Vale between 12:48 p.m. on Wednesday, 8th July 2026, when Widdecombe failed to log into her Channel 5 call, and 11:40 a.m. on Thursday, 9 July, when emergency services arrived? What do the forensic examinations of the property and the surrounding Dartmoor land reveal about how she died and when? Who discovered her, and what did that person see when they arrived? Is the reported mystery hiker a detail from local witness accounts,
neither confirmed nor denied by police, relevant to what happened at the property that night.
What motive, if any, drove someone to enter a rural, unguarded home on Dartmoor and kill a 78-year-old woman? Devon and Cornwall police have answered none of these questions publicly. They have ruled out terrorism. They have ruled out political motivation, to the extent their early investigation supports. They have said the investigation is open, active, and being pursued. Beyond that, the public record is silent. The 26-year-old man arrested in Newton Abbot and released without charge is not a suspect. His identity has not been made public. His connection to the case, if any existed beyond geography, has not been explained. Ann Widdecombe's home sits empty on the eastern edge of Dartmoor. The plaque at the end of the driveway still reads Widdecombe's Rest. The road that was sealed in the immediate aftermath of her death has since been reopened. Forensic officers have concluded their examination of the property. Whoever killed Ann Widdecombe has not been identified. She had been in British public life for nearly 4 decades. She had outlasted governments, political parties, shifting ideological climates, and every expectation that someone like her, unbending, unfashionable, consistently and vocally herself, would eventually become irrelevant. She never did. On the morning she died, she had been on television, defending the politics she believed in. She had sent her last text message at 12:19 in the afternoon. 48 minutes later, she missed a call she had been scheduled to take. Nobody knows what happened in the hours after that. The investigation is ongoing. The answers have not come. What remains certain is simpler and more durable than any of the political noise that surrounded her life. Ann Widdecombe was a person who worked until the end, who kept showing up, kept arguing, kept caring about the things she had always cared about. At 78, she was still in the room, still at the microphone, still herself. She deserves to have whoever took that from her held to account. If you've watched to the end, thank you. Subscribe to Dark Matters True Crime and leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us what you think investigators should be focusing on. We read every comment. We'll be back with updates on Operation Hunlen as this investigation develops.